In 2018, a revolutionary experiment forever changed the way that genomic technology would be viewed. The birth of Nana and Lulu, two Chinese girls that had been modified to imbue them with resistance to HIV, introduced an age of genetically modified humans, a title that had hitherto been circumvented by the scientific community due to fear of the implications that it would hold for the creation of designer babies and the anticipated public response to mankind's melding with biological machinery. Almost overnight, He Jiankui became a name associated with pushing the boundaries of science. However, fiery debate as to whether his drive was beneficial or detrimental to the field sparked in the days that followed. The controversy that entangles Jiankui's work endures in the present day, much like the results that it released upon the world. However, the novelty and shock that these experiments generated did help fixate genomics' greatest questions in the public eye. This was a positive development. After all, genetic alterations have the potential to change the very fabric of society, and as a species, it is our collective responsibility to understand and compromise on the issues that genetic alteration presents. To promote these goals of public possession, I want to frame the complexity of genomics in a medium that people of all ages and backgrounds can understand. Minecraft. Using this blocky world as a visual tool, I will attempt to dissect some of the stickier issues that adorn genome editing with my own thoughts and the feedback of my peers. To start, let's introduce the central question that this response project will focus on. How far should we go in editing the genome? To what extent can we justify it? And at what point does it become a violation of the laws of nature? To start answering this gargantuan question, it will help to dispel some of the myths surrounding genome editing, such that we can understand what is known to be achievable and what is largely fiction. For example, the common, extreme fear of a designer baby being in the proximal future is completely unwarranted, and we can thankfully remove that from our consideration of how far mankind can push. This is because traits like height, hair, eye, and skin color are polygenic, meaning that they are controlled by two or more genes. A lot of these genes are not fully understood, and it is expected that there will always be a degree of uncertainty as to how these traits are expressed. This means that it is unlikely that designer babies with hand-picked features will ever be completely viable. Another myth about gene technologies is that they are readily available, suggesting that malpractice may be facile for any common person. However, the financial costs of CRISPR and similar treatments demonstrate otherwise. Traditional treatments like IVF and pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, which is a technique that screens embryos for potential genetic anomalies, both cost upwards of $7,500, and you can see that here with the gold box and the shulker boxes, a price that exceeds costs that many people would be able to afford. CRISPR-Cas9 is not really a cheaper option, with therapeutic costs averaging 2.5 times higher than these traditional methods. This suggests that flagrant, inappropriate use of gene therapy is unlikely, since most projects utilizing these molecules require official grants, which are only awarded after extensive ethical checks are performed. With all this in mind, let's dive into what genomics can presently achieve, including some of the questions that these possibilities bear. The two dominant feasibilities that underlie our core inquiry are absolute medical need, in which there is no other solution presently possible, and superfluous genome editing, which involves supplementation of treatments that are already effective or the improvement of our genetic code without explicitly treating a disease. Regarding the first situation, there seems to be a clear public consensus, as evidenced by a lead workshop conducted in early March, that an unmet medical need warrants the use of gene therapy. The example I used to elaborate on the scenario during the workshop was that of two parents with cerebral palsy, who have a 100% chance of having another child with cerebral palsy if both parents are displaying the disease outwardly. I fully agree with this sentiment, and think that for rare cases in which no other optimal medical solution exists, it is our societal duty to ensure that couples with debilitating genetic illness can have happy and healthy children. A critical component of being a human is trying to minimize the pain that befalls you or your loved ones. Whether it be a virus or cancer, we can all empathize with the potency of disease and its ability to circumvent the goal above. If gene edits can open a road to the alleviation of some of this pain, our empathy and desire for a healthy community require that we pursue it. However, we cannot just check off this box and move on, as there are numerous concerns and questions that lie beneath the surface of this outwardly positive pursuit. For example, there are notable safety issues involved in these types of treatments, and CRISPR molecules have been shown to make off-target cuts in the genome. Personally, I think that this risk is not large enough to forego the treatment of people who would otherwise be unable to have healthy children. Furthermore, it is becoming possible to screen embryos for these unintended genetic mutations or off-target cuts, meaning that we might be able to catch these errors before we put the embryo back in the mother. This would minimize the damage that birthed embryos would sustain from treatment. CRISPR-Cas9 genome editing is one of the most accurate biological methods ever discovered, so to bar it based on concerns of safety seems misinformed when comparing its statistics to some of the effects that typical treatments and prescription drugs enact. A concern that was raised during the March LEAD workshop was informed consent. Since the changes that parents or scientists choose to make affect offspring, there is real potential for the genetic changes made to be inherited by countless generations in the future. Can we justify the fact that people who aren't even born yet will bear the burden of our decisions? And can we move forward without their consent? Well, I believe that we can and we should. Today's parents make decisions about their children's health and wellness long before they can do so themselves. From birth to early adolescence, parents and communal role models are foundational to a child's success in decision making. Assuming that the choice to gene edit an embryo is fueled by positive desires and goals, I think it is no far stretch to allocate this right to prospective parents, particularly if these decisions have the potential to alleviate future pain or suffering for generations that are to come. Of course, this raises questions about which disorders we should remedy. This is an incredibly difficult question to answer, and instead of trying to break it down via metrics like physical or mental disability, the only position I can take is that we should only try to cure diseases we know we can safely edit out of the genome. Within this division, I have no doubt that there will be controversial options, like Down syndrome or deafness. However, I remain conflicted on who should have authority over this powerful decision, or if discriminatory treatment of genetically plagued individuals is even an option that we should pursue at all. One final question that I found to be of immense value during the LEAD discussion was that of equal distribution of these critical technologies. How can we ensure that CRISPR treatments do not become a tool of the elite, since poorer families would find difficulty paying for genetic treatments that cost upwards of $20,000? The simplest solution would be to lobby insurance companies to cover such costs. Recently, UHC, Aetna, and Anthem have reversed discriminatory policies that prevented toddlers from receiving critical genetic treatments for spinal muscular atrophy. These treatments are ridiculously expensive compared to typical CRISPR-Cas9 treatments. The difference is about $2 million versus $20,000 to $40,000. Indicating coverage is feasible by said companies. However, if private insurance companies prove to be an obstacle to equal therapeutic access, it is always possible for the federal government to mandate coverage or to cover research and development costs via allocated funds. A world of readily accessible gene therapy is possible, and this only further justifies my belief that it should be a service available to those in need. With my position on medical need laid bare, I want to come full circle and conclude with superfluous alteration, which is perfectly exemplified by He Jiankui's gene editing experiments. After personal research and the discussions that were held during the LEAD workshop, I confidently believe that Jiankui's research and superfluous alteration in general shine as blatant exceptions to the position I have hitherto taken. In his manipulations of the genome, Jiankui was fully aware that the embryos he was working with could be spared from a fate of transmissible HIV by traditional treatments. As such, his foray into our twisted DNA was purely motivated by a desire to improve upon the traditional human form. These changes enter a frightening realm that invites hazard and inequality in treatment, with potential consequences that I feel are hardly justified given the lack of medical need for such alterations. In the context of its many iffy nuances, I stand with the international scientific community in scorning He Jiankui's work as a misguided and dangerous effort to perfect humanity. The biologist's research strays far too deeply into the unexplored and unknown areas of human existence, and I think that his results facilitated a necessary recognition of the troubles inherent to superfluous alteration. However, my thoughts on the matter are only one small part of the worldwide discussion on genomic change. The controversy of He Jiankui's edited babies has birthed an unprecedented opportunity for every mother, teacher, and student to deliberate how our species should move forward. This conversation continues today because gene editing affects more than just a remote town in China. Its impact lies within you, me, and every cell of our body. With wisdom and passion, it is time for all of us to take a stance on a question that will be lived by our eternal posterity. How far should we go? Thank you so much for watching.